Well, hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about freedom cities and other things. It's Tuesday, March 18, 2025. And let me just start with those freedom cities. There's a good article explaining this at Salon, and this is explaining what Elon Musk is doing. And it's freedom cities. And in the modern world we're in, where we know words mean the opposite of what they say, like we know freedom to work means that you don't get any minimum wage. Freedom cities consist of feudalism. This is the Project 2025 thing from Curtis Yarvin, where you end democracy. They explicitly say democracy is garbage. What you have to have instead is everyone working in company towns, which will be ruled by local tech bros who will have the power of a lord over people, and people will all be serfs and totally under the control of their local dictator. And that would be the glorious utopia that Musk Rush is trying to make. And it also explains why he's trying to destroy Social Security and all their government programs. Because in Joe Rogan's podcast, he explained this. He said retired people are basically parasites. They are not people who paid their dues and earned their reward. He said the fundamental weakness, quote, the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. The empathy exploit. Empathy is civilizational suicide, and the empathy response is a bug in Western civilization. So we should just take the dead and take the old and just push them on an ice floe to die, and that would save all the resources so he can have more money and go to Mars. And this is the glorious utopia that Republicans voted for without realizing it. And the town halls I see with Republican lawmakers show that apparently 90% of the Republican voters are completely against what's happening and didn't bother to find out what they were voting for. They didn't read Project 2025. Apparently, they believed like Trump's campaign lies instead of realizing what was really they're really in store for.
So Sam, is this part of Project 2025?
Oh yeah, it's all right there in Project 2025.
Okay.
End democracy, end the Constitution, declare new feudalism, end all government programs, end all Social Security and everything. It's all there. End all diversity, equity, and inclusion, restore white male supremacy. This is what Trump said. He wants to take us back to 1870, the Gilded Age, where the rich had everything and the poor had nothing. That's his idea of a utopia, and Elon Musk's idea of utopia. It's just very strange that poor people vote for this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah. But
And
the only people he serves is the oligarchs. That's why at his inauguration, it's all billionaires on stage. He's the president to give more money to the billionaires and take all the money away from everybody else. And the Republican base is beginning to realize that's what he is. Uh, but to be fair, the Democrats were very ineffective at messaging that, and they're even more ineffective at pushing back now. You can see how he won. The opposition is basically dead. It's a very strange system we have. Seem to have nothing but complete idiots get to the top in both parties, so nothing gets done. You would think democracy would make the best people rise to the top, but that is not what happens.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Anyway, I suppose a hereditary monarchy would be no better, but this system is not covering itself with glory.
yeah. Well, Sam, if you've, I'm not trying to do a comparison, but
Yeah,
one always does this when we go back to what 80, 90 years ago in Germany, where
yeah.
the goal there was to get rid of the people that weren't productive to society. And those were called a cancer on society that needs to be cut out, removed.
Did they
And
also want to just kill all the old people like Elon Musk? I think I didn't
that,
hear that. Didn't hear that much from the
no,
Nazis. In fact, they wanted to kill people who were actually productive, like the Jews. They were sort of
right.
self-defeating in that regard.
Yeah, what they wanted to do were the ones who were a burden on society.
Yeah, but the Jews are not a burden on society. That was stupid of them.
Well, yeah, yeah. So, that's where the parallel does not continue.
Yeah.
So, we try and make parallels, but that's not always the case.
Well, and I don't think old people are just a burden on society either. I'm kind of an old person myself, and the fact is, I think if you did just push them in an elimination chamber at age 60, that would have an effect on the young people, seeing what they have to look forward to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, yeah. All right, what else you got?
Well, anyway, so I went to the Tesla takedown protest. That was very good. Everyone was very happy. They had a lot of support. No trouble of any kind. 150 people out there just at local Tesla dealership, and that's happening everywhere. So it's really working. It's working so much that Elon Musk went on Twitter and attacked a woman who helped found the movement called Valerie Costa with complete lies, saying that she was funded by Act Blue, a Democratic fund agency, just like the Republicans are telling people that all the Republican voters protesting at town halls are shills paid for by the famous Jewish Democrat. I forget his name. They blame Soros. They blame everything on Soros,
Soros?
which is
Yeah.
complete lies. That's exactly like McCarthy claiming there's these communists everywhere. Um, and so, of course, he posted on her that she is committing crimes by daring to protest him, and therefore Musk, his followers are sending her death threats and everything. So that's messing up her life. But that's how they operate now. But anyway, so that's the joy of Musk and Trump. Uh, another one here.
Oh, wait, let me
Yeah,
jump in there.
yeah. Go ahead.
So interesting. Walnut Creek, California, they're also protesting
Oh,
at the
everywhere.
Tesla dealership. Yeah.
Yeah.
But across the street, almost directly across, is a Rivian showroom.
Oh,
So
well.
kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's also part of it. I mean, part of Tesla's falling stock price is not just his political missteps, but the fact is there's competitors, and his product
Right.
has not innovated in a while, and people say it's not really the best EV anymore. That's another reason why sales go down.
I will say, I think still Tesla has the best software.
That could be. And by the way, there's
Yeah.
something I saw. I put it in the tech section, but it's definitely pretty interesting. China has made fast chargers. I didn't think this would be possible at all. The fast chargers run at 1 megawatt with 1,500 volts, and therefore they can take you through a full charge in 5 to 8 minutes. I'm surprised the battery can take that,
Wow.
but they're deploying those all over China. I know. That's impressive.
Wow.
I just I thought the battery would overheat or something bad would happen.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, I
And
hope.
in the range, do we know what the range is?
No, but I think they're comparable to American cars, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's somebody on YouTube that
Yeah,
reviewed one of the Chinese cars, and it's really impressive from what I saw. They
yeah,
didn't mention the charge time, but they did say that the range was that of a gas-powered vehicle, if not more.
yeah. So I mean, that's why I see that we're putting huge tariffs on Chinese EVs to prop up our market, and this is something that's been going on my whole life. We have
Yeah,
American cars that are vastly inferior, and we try to protect huge trade barriers so we can continue to make crappy cars.
yeah,
And anybody that
yeah.
wants a good car in America pays the price and gets an import. Someday we ought to actually make good products, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Reminds
yeah,
me of the
yeah.
arguments I have with my college administration. You know, instead of trapping our students here like prisoners, how about we actually teach good classes so they'll want to take them? And they're like, "What are you, crazy?" Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
I hear you. I understand. Kind of on the same lines a little bit. Let me kind of jump in here with
yeah,
my next story.
yeah.
And that is there's a book that a ex Meta Facebook employee
Oh
published.
yeah,
Do you hear about this?
oh yeah. A tell-all.
So, a tell-all, yeah, tell-all book. And and so, here we're in this era of the billionaire lawsuits over freedom of speech. And so apparently there's a website that's been posted that contradicts a lot of the claims that have been made in the book. And an arbitrator, this is kind of interesting. And I don't know legally how this works, but an arbitrator has banned the book and banned the republishing
In
the book
America?
in America. An arbitrator doesn't
Oh.
have that legal stance.
I think arbitrators only have power if you sign an agreement in advance agreeing to settle things by arbitration.
But you can still go to court if you don't agree.
Well, then what's the
And
point? I mean, I thought there
well,
was
an
like a contractual
arbitrator,
obligation. Like if
yeah,
you buy certain products as a condition of buying the product, you agree to settle things by arbitration.
but you don't have, you're right, you agree to go to an arbitrator,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's that binding
Oh,
from
okay.
what my understanding is. Anyway,
Hmm.
no one kind of it's now since now this is the big news story. It's the
Yeah.
Barbara Streisand effect, if you
Yeah.
know what
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Where people
So
protest and it just makes it spread wider. So it just
yeah,
makes it
yeah.
worse. Yeah.
So now everybody's interested in the
Oh,
book.
yeah. I mean, I was interested. I read the claims. The claims are impressive. They claim that Zuckerberg wanted the China business so much that he offered to let Xi Jinping name his unborn child, offered to censor content for China, offered to share facial recognition with them, and learned Mandarin, all to try to court Chinese business for Facebook. So he's like obsessed like that, the way Trump's obsessed with taking Canada and Greenland and Putin is obsessed with taking Ukraine. This seems to be a common thing among these oligarchs. They want to expand their empire like Alexander the Great and go down into
Yeah.
history as the one that expanded into somewhere new. I guess that once you have all the money in the world, that's the next accomplishment to go for. I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know either. So was this one, is this why Zuckerberg did learn Mandarin? That was like 10, 15 years ago, right?
I didn't even know he did that. I did hear how he spent a year just killing everything he ate. He's done a
Yeah,
lot of
right,
crazy
right.
things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It seems like being this rich is bad for you, you know, it just sort of makes you crazy.
yeah. Yeah. He's still making money though. All right.
He's got a pile of money. He can have it. It doesn't seem to be doing him any good. I'm happy with my little bit of money. That's enough. And I don't have to do all
That's
this
right.
crazy shit.
All right. What story were you going to tell us about?
Well, so the NIH, National
Yes.
Institute of Health, has been informed that scientists proposing things have been told to scrub all references to mRNA out of their grants. And as you know, the mRNA vaccine since
Yeah.
COVID has turned out to be a medical miracle. They're making effective anti-cancer vaccines, and many other things are coming. But all that research apparently will have to stop in America because of RFK Jr. And now anything that mentions any kind of vaccine, and especially any mRNA, is now forbidden and must do no more research on this topic because the government has decided for political reasons that mRNA is a bad thing, since they're even though it's completely false. And it's like the Shake and Shake. Steak and Shake has now made politically correct French fries. They have removed the seed oils, which RFK Jr. again baselessly regards as unhealthy, and they're cooking it in nice, healthy beef tallow, which the RFK Jr. thinks is healthier. So, like I say, this is why I haven't heard anybody else saying this yet, but I think you can compare the Trump administration to the Cultural Revolution, where you have a figure like Mao come in and just pass these edicts based on nothing but his personal religions, forcing you to do stupid things that won't work and to be politically correct to the new orthodoxy, which denies a whole bunch of scientific truth.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's and so Columbia University has received orders from Trump saying they must modify their university policies or he's going to cut all their funding. So they have expelled, suspended, and revoked the degrees of 22 students who protested against Israel.
Wait. Revoked a degree?
Yep, they've revoked
How
the
can you
degrees.
how can you revoke a degree?
I think colleges can revoke a degree at any time. I think they've done that before. Like if you get a degree and then you're caught doing something god awful, like being a pedophile or something, they can revoke a degree.
No.
Oh, they say they're doing it. So I think they can do that. The university can say they just like say we no longer recognize this person as having a degree. We cancel it. I think they can do that. Anyway, that's what they said they're doing. Uh, and the other thing I think that's hitting a lot of news is, of course, Trump had sent a bunch of people, deporting them to like El Salvador and I think Nicaragua. And a judge ordered and said, this is completely illegal. You didn't have the authority to do that. And he said, well, tough. I'm not pulling back the planes. And the planes are now outside U.S. territory, so they're not subject to U.S. law anymore, which is complete bullshit. I mean, if you are in the U.S., you are subject to U.S. law, even if your actions take effect elsewhere.
Wait, run this by me again?
Yeah, so Trump deported a bunch of people, put them on planes, and then a
Yes.
judge said that's illegal. You have to bring them back. And Trump said, I'm not bringing them back because that plane has moved outside U.S. border. Therefore, the law no longer applies.
I think he Trump might be correct on this.
It's going to go to the courts. It's going to go up to the Supreme
Yeah.
Court or something, and I guess we'll find out. I know if you go to Thailand to have sex with teenagers, they've said they'll prosecute you here in America for that. It is not true that anything that happens out. The point is, if you are an American citizen, you are still subject to American law, even if you go somewhere else. There was a person that put a phishing site up in a
Hmm.
Central American country like 10 years ago. And I asked my lawyer, can I hack into them and steal back the stolen data to inform people they've been hacked? Because they have no cybersecurity laws in that nation. And he said, no, you're still bound by the cybersecurity laws in America if you're an American, even if you do it in another country. Certainly, if you ever came back to America, you could be prosecuted. So I think, I don't think that's true. And by the way, we have passed laws recently. You're not allowed to pay bribes in foreign nations, and Trump administration has pushed back against that too. But that's if you're an American, you're bound by American law, even if you go somewhere else. You're still bound by American law.
Yeah, so the reason I'm questioning this is because if you're on a ship and airship, airplane, but
Yep.
let's say a ship, and once you're in international waters, um,
And you can gamble and stuff.
right, there are different laws that
Yeah,
apply.
you're right. This is why we need a lawyer. There's subtlety
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you commit a murder,
Yeah.
you're right. That's kind of interesting. There,
Yeah.
years and years ago, probably 30 years ago, there was a story of a couple who was sailing the world. They ran into another couple, and they wound up stealing their sailboat. And they killed the couple. They left them in a lagoon on a deserted island in the South Pacific. And you're right.
That's
They
piracy.
were,
Yeah.
yeah, but they were brought back to the U.S.
Yeah. See, I
and
think
convicted of murder.
Yeah, I think it might just be the difference between state and federal law because gambling laws are
Huh.
state by state. There are some states where gambling is legal.
Right,
So
right.
being out in the ocean means you're outside the jurisdiction of the states. But I think federal law still applies to you as long as you're a citizen. But I'm just,
Yeah,
we
but
need,
are there federal murder laws? No.
yeah, absolutely. I think there's no
I
state where murder is legal.
No, no, that's what I'm getting at is that's a state law, not a federal law.
Oh, well, I think it's a federal law too, but that's why we need a lawyer. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So just
yeah,
clarification here.
yeah,
This is an AI on the college universities.
yeah,
The answer is yes, they can revoke a degree after graduation
yeah.
if, and I would agree with this, if it's discovered that there's evidence of serious misconduct, meaning academic dishonesty, fraud that occurring during the degree program.
Well, and if you have, they determine you broke campus laws by protesting in a way that the campus decides, and they can regard that as you should have been expelled. We shouldn't have let you have the degree. That's what, that's their interpretation. And it all reminds me very much of what I mentioned before, the Berkeley loyalty oath. This is the thing. College administrators will always just roll over for the government
Yeah,
and not
yeah.
maintain freedom of their faculty. I think the economic pressure on them is so large that the faculty expecting rights are fooling themselves. Just like the
Uh,
members of the Freedom Cities, ruled by your local Elon Musk type oligarch, if you expect him to care about your rights, you're misunderstanding how this works.
Yeah, here I've got one for you here.
Yeah.
There is a footnote that says if a student is convicted of a crime that reflects poorly on the institution
Right.
and the integrity of the degree,
Right.
the college may consider revocation. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So if you bring scandal on it, they'll kick you out. I think the same thing's true of lawyers. The bar association will kick you out if you
Yeah.
do something that reflects badly on them, like that's what happened to most of Trump's lawyers.
Yeah, but that's a little bit different because that's the right to practice law or the right to practice medicine,
Sure, but
if you
essentially,
will, for a
a
doctor.
college degree is essentially the same thing as a professional license. It means you're credentialed to operate in that field, and when they revoke it, you're presumably no longer credentialed to act in that field. It's just a little bit less strictly enforced.
Yeah, but I would disagree, and this is why because it demonstrates that you've achieved a certain level of education proficiency.
It also means that the college respects you. Your
Yeah,
reputation
yeah.
matches their reputation.
All
Anyway,
right. Well,
yeah,
you're right. We need a lawyer, and
yeah,
neither one of us are lawyers. Let's move
yeah, yeah.
on. What's your
Yeah, so,
next one?
well, the evangelicals, U.S. evangelical groups, have spoken up urging Trump to stop blocking HIV/AIDS programs, which I was very glad to see. That you usually hear about Christians being hypocritical, but here's evangelical demonstrating real Christian charity. They created PEPFAR, which has saved 25 million people that would have died of AIDS and given them necessary AIDS drugs in places like Africa. And they said, you got to keep delivering those drugs. They're saving lives. And if you impair the treatment of people taking those drugs, then not only do they get sick, but it also creates drug resistant HIV, and they correctly say you're doing no good at all by blocking this funding. You have to restore it on grounds of Christian charity and also even self-interest. Yeah, I'm glad to see it. Um, it's not often I get to say a nice thing about the evangelical church, but here they are doing the right thing. Now, I don't think
And
it's going to do any good because I don't think Musk and Trump care, but they're on the right side of this at least.
no, who's after this is RFK Jr.
Of course, anything to
Yeah,
stop a disease, he's against that. He wants to spread disease as far as possible while lying about it.
right,
I
right,
didn't know he
right.
was against this one, but I'm sure he's against HIV treatment. Oh, he doesn't believe HIV causes AIDS. That's right. He has every possible medical quackery.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
he thinks that all this is not real, and all they have to do is like eat more raw meat, and that'll fix their problems.
Right, right. And I do know there's a doctor, virologist who's on YouTube who's from an African country. He's, I believe, in the US. And I would argue he's very well respected. And he's from a country in by South Africa on the, let's see, eastern side, tiny country. And he's been talking about this because that's the country his parents are from or where he's from. And he's saying, look, we need the drugs, but
Yeah,
RFK Jr. is blocking it.
yeah, yeah. Well, and in the same spirit, the FDA has been ordered to, everyone has to return back to the office. So when they return, there's not enough room in the parking lots. There's not enough room in the buildings. There's not enough chairs, tables, or anything in the buildings. And so they had to wait more than an hour just to clear security to get in. And when they get
Wait,
in,
where is this?
was the main location of the FDA, I think in Washington.
Oh, oh, FDA. Okay,
Yeah, the
got it.
Food and Drug Administration. But what's even more interesting is everybody had to wait an hour to get in through security, and then they all brought bottled water because the buildings have Legionnaire's disease. And so I'm thinking this is why they say working for the government is just pointless. I've been telling my students, anybody I knew, I would tell them not to work for the government in a Trump administration. It's pointless. I mean, everybody can make a lot more money in the private sector. The only reason you work for the government is patriotism because you believe in what you're doing. And I think you can write that off. In the Trump administration, you won't be allowed to do your job. You won't accomplish anything, and then they'll just fire you. So you might as well just not even waste your time working for the government. There's no point. I mean, I know people who took a pay cut by a factor of four to move into the public sector because they felt patriotic. They had a mission. I'm going to contribute to good things, and that might be justified under other administrations. But I think the possibility of accomplishing anything good under a Trump administration can be totally discounted.
Yeah, yeah,
If you
got
have
it.
the goal to be patriotic and improve the world, then either work for another country or work for the private sector until Trump leaves. There's no hope of any good coming out of the government in the next 4 years, I think.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, anyway, then I got some tech stories. Um,
Okay.
this one's good, clean fun. So, a vulnerability research analyst, Will Dorman, found a vulnerability in a Microsoft product. So he contacted the Microsoft Security Response Center with a complete description of the bug and gets a form letter back saying, we won't even look at this without a video demonstrating it. So he maliciously complied by making a 15-minute video of him just sitting there not doing anything, playing irritating music, and because the steps are already in the thing, and it's 15 minutes long with a screenshot from Zoolander in which the protagonist unveils the Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good. Anyway, this is typical nonsense from Microsoft. I must say, when I found a Microsoft vulnerability like 15 years ago, I contacted Microsoft and I immediately got a response from them saying they don't care, they're not going to fix it. But at least I got a response. Then I
Yeah.
humiliated them on stage at DEF CON, and then they fixed it. But anyway, I didn't get quite that. Anyway, so there's a big story echoing through the Infosec chamber about a GitHub supply chain attack. Um, Wiz Research discovered this. They just got bought by Google today too. They found that somebody compromised a bot authentication token and a personal authentication token. They were then able to get into GitLab and GitHub and poison the source code for something called a GitHub action, which sounds like a plugin, and that compromised 23,000 GitHub repositories. But the harm it did is actually pretty minimal because it did not steal, it stole all your secrets, but it didn't send them back to a central server. It just published them in the log. But the log is not public unless your GitHub repository is public. So private repositories really probably didn't suffer much from this. Anyway, it's getting a lot of attention. I've seen a lot of these GitHub supply chain attacks are out there. That's the problem with using a public cloud service for your source code.
Yeah. So, along the same lines, cyber criminals are promoting malicious Microsoft OAuth apps
Oh,
that masquerade as
oh,
Adobe and DocuSign apps. So it looks like it's a Microsoft with Adobe or a DocuSign that wants you to sign it, but in reality, it's delivering malware and it's stealing Microsoft M365 credentials.
and there isn't any trusted repository for those apps, is there? There's the Microsoft Store, but people don't really use that much. So
Right.
I guess I guess we're all kind of used to just going to a random website and downloading software from it, which is a pretty bad habit.
Yeah. Yeah. But these are documents that you're getting and it says signed here.
Oh yeah, click here to
And
get this. Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah. And it's and if it looks like an official Microsoft document,
which is easy.
logos and everything, yeah, which
Yeah,
anybody could generate.
yeah.
And then you click, you sign, and then you're infected. But what's interesting is DocuSign has been under attack before in the past. Um, and I'm not, that was probably 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah, I've gotten used to it. We're using it at the college now. But one thing I've noticed, I don't have
Yeah.
to download any software. It all just happens in a browser. So if anybody
Right.
said I had to
Yeah.
download DocuSign software, I'd be suspicious. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but certainly
All
an
right.
average user wouldn't notice. I mean, people constantly pop up things and say you have to install things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right. You got more? I've got
yeah,
one last one.
yeah, I
If
got a few more tech ones.
yeah,
Alphabet.
go ahead.
So Alphabet spun off a free space optic internet provider called Terra. I've heard about this for years. I've never heard anybody do it in a large scale. They originally were going to bounce the light off balloons, but it turned out there were legal problems getting the balloons to stay up there. People got mad at them. So now they're just taking traffic light sized terminals, sticking it on poles, and they're using free space optics with a beam 1 centimeter across to just send data through light through the air. And they say it's going to be a competitor to Starlink. It's going to be a way to reach remote areas of nations that don't have good internet service that's going to be much cheaper than putting up satellites. So that's interesting.
So wait, run this by me again. They're using, I'm
They
assuming it's lasers.
They're using lasers and they can go 20 kilometers at 20 gigabits per second by just beaming laser from one tower to another.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like microwaves.
Yeah, you just put up a series of
Yeah.
towers, which is much cheaper than putting up satellites. And now you can deliver broadband internet to remote areas. That's the idea. You don't have to dig tunnels for the cables or anything. So it's people that can't get cable TV, they can get this thing to you cheaper.
Hmm. So how's that going to work in fog and rain?
That's what I wondered about. Fog, rain,
Yeah.
and smoke. I bet there'll be some limitations there. Uh,
Yeah.
but that, by the way, I don't know how well the satellite signal works in fog, rain, and smoke.
Well, it's electromagnetic waves.
Yeah, but the fog might dissipate it. I mean, you got to get that signal all the way up to the satellite. I would think fog and rain would impair that signal too.
Um, I
I don't know.
think, well, it's going to depend on the frequency.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something interesting. I work for one of the cellular companies, and cellular transmission of data works better in the winter. No, I'm sorry, in the spring. And Sam, I don't know the physics behind this.
Yeah.
When the trees have leaves and are filled with water, for some reason that attenuates the signal and it propagates better than in the winter and
Hmm.
fall
Yeah.
when, yeah,
It'll have to do with the wavelengths. Yeah.
yeah, it has to do with the wavelength. And also
Really.
radio waves at certain frequencies are able to propagate faster, or not faster, but further over ice, like water, bodies of water, lakes, things like that.
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see on that. That's an interesting one. Kind of sidelight. Do you know who Mark Roper is?
No.
He's on YouTube. He was involved in getting Curiosity on Mars. He was part of the design team.
Mhm.
He's in California. He's got a website and video following that's called Crunch Labs. He's very well known. He came up with the glitter bombs to attack
Oh, I saw it.
the
Porch
yeah the
pirates. Yeah.
yeah. So what he just did is he compared Tesla's whatever they call it, autopilot,
Self-driving. Yeah.
yeah,
Self-driving. Yeah.
versus LiDAR. And they went someplace.
Oh, yeah.
If you've seen the video, it
He
just
goes
came
to the
out.
Wile E. Coyote wall. That was great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And Tesla doesn't do so well.
Because they use only cameras.
Correct.
So if you
Yeah.
put up a screen with a painting of the road on it, it'll plow right into it. And I know, and he showed also, I think it was under foggy conditions, it'll just plow right into a mannequin of a
Yeah.
child. It was
Yeah.
really impressive demonstration of bad safety compared to competitors.
Yeah. So the question though is, would a person do better?
Oh, well, that's what I thought. Tesla's tried to defend themselves on that, saying it's safer than people, but I've seen serious questions about that research. I know when I
Yeah.
first heard about electric cars self-driving, I said, well, it's got to be better than people. But I said the same thing about vape pens. I said, this has got to be better than smoking. In both cases, this wasn't really true. And I said, you can't have these simple knee-jerk responses. You have to really have data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of sad that he didn't do it based against a standard, which would be a person. Um,
Well, I thought it was a
yeah.
good test. He had like a little model of a kid there. And
No, no, he
yeah,
he did do. There's nothing wrong that I see flawed in his testing methodology, but he didn't use a standard, which would be a person driving a car.
right. Well, he put it on self-driving. Oh, but he didn't try people. Right. Okay.
Right, right.
Well, of course, in a way he couldn't because the way he had it set up, the human knows where the obstacle is. So even if there's smoke, you know when you have brakes. So you'd have to somehow make it more obscured for a person.
You have to have somebody in isolation and
Yeah.
bring them out and say drive.
Or you'd have one of these things like where the cops practice gun battles where you're going down the road and they stick out this
Yeah,
mannequin on a stick suddenly to see if you can react. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You could do
And
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it would have been nice to
Well,
kind of
yeah.
balance that out.
Well, yeah, but I'm just thinking if I did it, you'd also have to have several people because people vary greatly in their skill.
Right.
It would be,
And
yeah,
and the other I would argue is you want somebody probably that's been driving for several hours and
yeah,
for the
yeah,
monotony instead of just somebody that's fresh gotten into a car.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
If you go out there, look at Roper's uh,
yeah. And
video on this. It's really interesting, about 20 minutes long or so.
yeah, yeah, very good. And I think it also demonstrates what we've all kind of known is that Teslas are in fact much more dangerous than their competitors. Um,
Well, the autopilot.
yeah, which would be pretty obvious. Yeah, his
Yeah,
decision
yeah,
to not use multiple sensors is clearly a bad move,
yeah,
but it
yeah,
is to make them cheaper, and apparently Teslas are cheaper. Anyway,
yeah.
so there I found a couple more ones here. Like ProPublica uses AI in their journalism, and they published an article explaining why this is responsible and what they did, and it actually made sense. Ted Cruz had a list of like thousands of government contracts and said, we canceled all these because they're woke. So they used AI to go through all of them and summarize what they could find. And they said they used the AI to look for patterns, and they made sure to tell the model not to guess if it wasn't sure. And then they had humans verify the findings. And which may and verify the facts. But they said this is how you can plow through a whole pile of data and get the answer by using AI, which is reasonable. Summarize a large mountain of data, which is a huge problem. I think this started with the Snowden leaks. I mean, once you dump like megabytes of government data, it's too much work for journalists to comb through it trying to find the good stuff. WikiLeaks did this. They would just dump a
Yeah.
bunch of data and then it doesn't really hit the news much because your reporters can't figure out how to find the good stuff in there. And AI would help with that.
Yeah. Or if there is good stuff in there.
I know it could
Yeah.
be. That's the thing. I mean, you're going to read 10,000 pages of junk and they say, well, nothing was interesting. That's a job for
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's something that lawyers do.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and and speaking of AI, Microsoft is going to add AI features to Notepad and Paint.
Oh, I know. That's
But
just what I want.
yeah, but you well, yeah, I'm never going to see them because they're going to charge for them. You have to have a paid Microsoft 365 account or you don't get the AI features. Gosh, I'll cry all the way home.
I don't want the
I
features.
know in my malware analysis class, in my Windows internals class, I would use Notepad as an example of a simple application. And then I found that Notepad is really complicated and they keep changing it and there are multiple versions and it has a lot of bizarre advanced features. I thought, how complicated could Notepad be? That'll be the simplest thing to look at. That is not true. Microsoft has to
Interesting.
complexify everything. Maybe I should go back to Edit. There's a DOS command line tool called Edit. Maybe that hasn't changed. Anyway,
It's not available anymore.
okay. Well, what I did was I just made my own Hello World application in Visual Studio, and yet that changes with versions of Visual Studio. I made an example. It had 5 sections, and when my students do it, it only has 4 sections. Life is tough. Anyway,
Yeah.
so the AI crawlers are so vigorous that they're DDoSing websites. There's a site called SourceHut, which I guess has a lot of source code like GitHub, and the large language model crawlers are flooding it, slowing down the traffic. So what they did was deploy tar pits. They got one called Nepenthes, and tar pit will just slow down anybody that uses it to snarl up the AI crawlers. So that's a pretty hostile response, but that's one way to do it.
I see. I see.
So
Interesting, huh?
yeah. And the
Hmm.
last one I have is real cheerful for me. Waymo. Waymo is in San Francisco. My students use it. They say it's great. They just got permission to go to SFO. And I would
Oh,
like
they
that.
did.
Yeah, and I would like that. When I take
Huh.
Ubers or Lyfts to SFO, I often have a bad experience. And especially when I take taxi cabs back, I always have a bad experience. And I think I would rather take Waymos in both directions if I could. Because what my students tell me is the Waymo drives slow and careful. It doesn't scare you. And that's what I would rather have. I'd rather spend an extra 10 minutes doing it and not have to deal with a driver being crazy.
Yeah, Sam, I wonder why. Do you know why Waymo has not been able to go to SFO?
Oh, well, because of unions. Like
Ah, okay.
they had to agree not to carry cargo, but just people, or the Teamsters union would block them. It's like the taxi cab unions and stuff that don't want to. They're impairing their business. It certainly will impair their business. I mean, I'd much rather ride a Waymo than another, from what I hear.
Yeah, yeah,
They say
yeah,
it's great. You ride it everywhere. It's peaceful and relaxing. It just gets you there, and you can like peacefully read a book or use your phone or something.
yeah. I wonder how that's going to work out with the airport being crowded.
That's what I
And
wonder, because the
yeah,
airport is
yeah,
real hostile driving. But apparently, that's the whole thing about Waymos. They're very conservative, very slow and careful. They won't go ahead until the traffic is clear. So it'll probably be slower, but safe, which is all I care about.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
an experiment. We can just debate about it, but
Yeah. But
we
like I
got
say,
to actually,
my students
yeah,
are happy with Waymo, except they say at some times of day it's more expensive. Now that would be annoying. But anyway,
yeah. So I've got one last one. City
yeah.
of Berkeley has joined up with a couple of other cities, such as San Francisco and Philadelphia, which has banned the sale and use of pricing algorithms when it comes to homes, the pricing of
Oh.
homes, as well as setting rental prices.
Right. I've heard about this one. Basically,
Yeah,
price fixing, where all the rental agencies use the same software, so they just ram the price up as high as possible.
Yeah, and I did a little research. There's a company that's called RealPage that landlords have been using, and I guess real estate agents to set prices. And the Department of Justice has, starting in August, over 30 class action lawsuits against the company.
Yeah.
So I think this is kind of interesting. Why, I mean, is this price fixing?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just the same.
Yeah,
Remember years ago, Apple and Google made a secret backdoor deal to cut the pay they would offer tech workers and not offer them a better deal at the other company, so they have to accept lower pay. It's the same. It's price fixing.
yeah, no, it is price fixing.
It's preventing competition. It means you don't have companies competing. They're all just one block,
Yeah.
all fixing the price, so you have no choice. That's the idea.
Yeah, but not everybody subscribes to RealPage.
That's true. And so this would something, whenever you have like a monopoly-based court case like this, you have to explain that they really have most of the market, which is why Apple can always charge whatever they want, because whenever you take
Yeah,
it to court, they say, well, you could just buy Windows or Android.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
if as long as there's a viable alternative, that's a defense. And I
yeah,
maybe in this case too, I'm not sure.
yeah. Anyway, the claim is that it's driving up the rental market and
Yeah.
real estate prices.
Which I imagine is true.
Yeah, which I believe probably is true too.
Yeah,
However, like I said, I guess you have independent landlords and you have real estate agents working for smaller companies,
right.
and they would be affected as well because they're seeing what the prices are.
I suppose. I mean, the point would
Yeah,
be, are there enough of them? I mean, if it was only 10% of the market doing the price fixing, maybe it wouldn't matter. But if it's like 80%, then most people aren't going to be able to find another one.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, that's it for me this round.
Yeah, it's it for me too. So I guess the next one will be Friday.
You got it. Sounds
Okay.
good.